All right, here we go. So, what we're going to talk today is about radian measure. Okay? Now, radian is kind of like the word radius. So, in a circle, the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, right? Okay, 2 times pi times r is the radius. So, if I want to talk about the distance around the circle, that's the circumference. Now, how many degrees are there in a circle? 360 degrees. Okay, there's 360 degrees in a circle. Now, let's say the radius of this circle is 1. Okay, what would the circumference of the circle be if the radius is 1? You don't need your calculator. 2 pi. Okay, so if the radius equals 1, the circumference equals 2 pi. So when the radius equals 1, it's called the unit circle. The unit circle has a radius equal to 1. Okay, so we use the unit circle in trigonometry to figure out angles. Okay, so 360 degrees in trigonometry is equal to 2 pi. Okay, 2 pi radians. So degrees to radians, 360 degrees equals 2 pi radians. So if we put the xy axis on here, okay, this is a 90-degree angle, right? So this is 90 degrees and 0 degrees. We talked about this last time. 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and 360 degrees when we're talking about coterminal angles. Okay? So a 90-degree angle equals how many radians? Okay? A 90-degree angle equals how many radians? Well, I know 360 degrees is 2 pi radians. So if I have a 90-degree angle and I want to get to radians, I'm going to put 2 pi radians over 360 degrees. What does that do? Well, back in physical science, you did it this way. It's called your unit conversions, where degrees canceled with degrees, your labels canceled. 90 times 2 is 180. 180 divided by 360, because you get 180 pi over 360. And 180 over 360 is pi over 2. So at 90 degrees, it's the same as pi over 2 radians. Now, when we're in radians, we're not going to write radians after every single one of these. Okay? So if there's no label on it in trig, you assume that it's radians. If there's a degree sign, then you assume it's degrees. If there's no symbol on it, then you assume it's radians. So if 90 degrees is pi over 2, how many radians is 180 degrees? I'll make this easier on you. Pi over 2 is the same as 1/2 pi. If 90 degrees is 1/2 pi, how many radians is 180 degrees? 1 pi. And if 90 is 1/2 pi, 180 is pi, how big is 270? 1.5 pi, also known as 3 pi over 2. We use improper fractions in trig, not mixed numbers. So 3 pi over 2. So 360 is how many radians? 2 pi. So we can figure out any angle in terms of radians by using the conversion ratio. And instead of using 360 over 2 pi, we're going to use 180 in pi because that just is simpler. Okay. So if you have 45-degree angle, okay, if you have a 45-degree angle, if you want to get to radians, you multiply by pi over 180 degrees. Your degrees cancels. So 45 pi over 180 reduces down. 45 actually goes into both. How many times? How many times does 45 go into 180? 4 times. So this is pi over 4. So pi over 4 equals 45 degrees. What's 75 degrees? What's the trick to do this on your calculator? How can your calculator help you instead of like trying to figure out a number that goes into each? Could you type the fraction 75 over 180 and press equals and let the calculator do the work for you? Okay, it might give you a decimal and then you have to ask it to do a fraction for you. And what do you get? What's 75 over 180? 5/12. So you get 5 pi over 12. Okay, so that's going from degrees to radians. What if we go from radians to degrees? What if we're at, let's say we're at 2 pi over 3 radians. And I want to know how many degrees that is. Well, to figure out how many degrees, I'm going to put radians on the bottom and degrees on the top. So my pi's are going to cancel, and I take 2/3 of 180. What's 2/3 of 180? 120 degrees. Do another one. $17 pi over 12. Well, the pi's cancel. 17 times 180 over 12. That's 255 degrees. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Because you're either multiplying by pi over 180 or 180 over pi, depending on what you're turning into what. Now, coterminal angles. Coterminal angles are how many degrees apart from each other? Last time we worked on this, coterminal angles were how far apart from each other? 360. So if you had a 30-degree angle, its coterminal angle was 390 or 750 or negative 330 or so on. Okay, those are all coterminal angles because they're all 360 degrees apart. Well, if we have pi over 4 radians, what's coterminal with it? Trying to find out what's coterminal with that. Well, how many radians is 360 degrees? 2 pi radians, right? So if 2 pi radians are in 360 degrees, then to be coterminal, you have to go how far? 2 pi, right? So you take 2 pi plus pi over 4. Oh, fractions. You guys hate fractions. But too bad you have to work with them sometimes anyway. To add or subtract fractions, you need a common denominator. The common denominator, I only have one denominator here, and that's a 4. If I put a 1 down here, common denominator is going to be 4, right? So I have to multiply top and bottom of this one by 4, so I get 8 pi over 4, is the same as 2 pi, plus pi over 4 is 9 pi over 4. 9 pi over 4 is coterminal with pi over 4, because they're 2 pi apart. Okay? What's another one? Well, I take 9 pi over 4 and add another 8 pi over 4 to it. So then 17 pi over 4 is also coterminal with that. Well, if I want a negative one that's coterminal, instead of adding 8 pi over 4, I'm going to subtract 8 pi over 4. And I get negative 7 pi over 4. That's a pi. So negative 7 pi over 4 is coterminal. So those are all coterminal angles. All right. Whoa. Something's wrong here. There we go. I got to know what quadrant certain angles are in. Now, if it's less than 2 pi, it's pretty easy. If I have 13 pi over 10, okay? I have 13 pi over 10, and I want to know what quadrant it is, I just change it into a degrees, okay? I don't try to memorize where all these angles are. I just turn it into degrees and figure out where it is. So how do we turn this into degrees? Multiply by 180 over pi. The pi's cancel here, okay? And then 180 over 10 is 18. So what's 18 times 13? Calculadora, por favor. 18 times 13. 234 degrees. All right. Thinking of quadrants, 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360. 234 is somewhere here, which is quadrant number 3. Okay. What if I have 28 pi over 3? What quadrant am I in? Well, I could change it into degrees, or I could find a coterminal angle. What do I subtract from this to get smaller? Well, what's my common denominator going to be? 3. So 2 pi is the same as what over 3? 6 pi over 3. So I get 22 pi over 3, and that still seems big, so I subtract another 6 pi over 3. And then I get 16 pi over 3, and that still seems big, so I'll subtract another 6 pi over 3. And then I get 10 pi over 3, and then I subtract another 6 pi over 3, and I get 4 pi over 3, and 4 pi over 3. And that seems more like where I need to be. Because if I subtract another 6 pi over 3, I'll be negative. So 4 pi over 3 is where I need to be. And then if I just change it into a degree, 4/3 of that is 240 degrees. 240 is where? Well, it's in quadrant number 3. Okay? So that's how to find the quadrant that you're in. Okay? All right. I think that's probably good enough for today. Oh, well, this is too short of a period probably to do 2 lessons, but too long of a period just to do 1. But I guess we'll just do one lesson today and call it good. So I will put that out on Google Classroom, and then we'll do 2 on Thursday in here.